All right, let's talk about the PTR. It's version 1.32.9, and it was just posted 3 hours ago. Recently, I think a lot of people have been unhappy with that some of the patches were just like chicken footprints and just random stuff like that. So a lot of people, including myself, were waiting for some balance changes to come into the picture here, and now we finally got some. So the patch, the post reads, the team has been keeping an eye on recent tournaments, as posted by KVax. And after careful consideration and internal discussion, today we've patched the PTR to include the following additional changes and updates. Our focus has been on human vulnerability to summon harass, Undead's overperformance, and Night Elf Tier 1 dominance. So human vulnerability to summon harass, I would say it's not to just summons, like for example a Warden with Fan of Knives, it's also, I think peasants harass in general, might be the word. I'm not sure about just necessarily summon harass, is what I would say is one of the problems. But yeah, Undead's overperformance is interesting to say that, because in Asia, which is the strongest region, Undead is not exactly dominating. They have 1-2-0 there, having some deep runs here and there, but it's not like he's winning tournaments left and right. It's more in Europe that we see Happy dominate like crazy, and then after that you have a lot of other Undeads that will have deep runs regularly with, I guess, X-Lord on top of that list. Then you have guys like Vortex as well. So it's interesting to say Undead's overperformance here exactly. It kind of feels like I would love to hear more exactly, like what do they mean by that, right? Night Elf Tier 1 dominance, I think also that sounds a little vague, right? Because you don't see Night Elf Mass Tier 1 like, I mean, against Human, for example, you see it, but you don't see it in every matchup. It's mostly against Orc. So I'm a little bit surprised that this is not mentioned. I feel like it should say Night Elf Tier 1 dominance against Orc, because it's not an overall thing necessarily. And then he says, thank you back to Warcraft, DreamHack, ESL, WGL, and all the community contributors who produce such amazing games and content during these times. Your feedback has not fallen on deaf ears. That's good to know. That is pretty good to know that they took feedback in consideration. I know that during DreamHack there was a questionnaire about some of the possible changes and just balance feedback in general that was being passed around. It was sent to me, but I chose not to fill it out. Personally, I feel like these days my own balance feedback is not super important. I really feel like the way we should balance the game is, first and foremost, we should ask the top 3 players of every race what they think. And then we should go from there. So obviously everybody's going to have an opinion. I have mine. I'm never going to stop saying my own opinion about balance on my stream. But these days I've been trying to tone it down on like social media or like Back to Warcraft. I know that Neo doesn't like it when everybody's whining in the chat, which is pretty much every day. So I've been for a long time now trying to be quiet about balance there. If just out of respect for Neo, and also feel like these days in tournaments, every time somebody's doing well, everybody's using that to say, oh look, his race is imbalanced or something. And then there's definitely a lot of credit that's being taken away from the players. So it's kind of put me off of balance whining as well. But like I said, I still will not stop doing it, but it will be mostly on my stream and maybe after I lose a game, I guess. Most of the time. Unit balance, so they start with human. Actually, it's a unit, technically it's a building. Arcane Tower, increased feedback plus summon damage from 20 to 25, reduces shot to kill on Skeleton Warriors / Carrion Beetles, level 1 from 7 to 6. So it means that before, Beetles level 1 or Skeleton Warriors took 7 shots from an Arcane Tower to kill. Now it's going to take 6 shots. Carrion Beetles level 2 from 11 to 10. Spirit Wolves level 1 from 9 to 8. Spirit Wolves level 2 from 13 to 11. Treant from 11 to 9. Treant with Nature's Blessing from 14 to 12. Lava Spawn level 1 from 15 to 13. Developers note this change should help human deal with constant summon harass, which should in turn mitigate peasant losses. I think it's nice to get like a small change there with the Arcane Tower. It's obviously going to help. Yo, Shaitanu, thank you very much for the resub. Welcome back. Yeah, my main concern is that the peasant losses very often will happen before Arcane Towers are even really set up. Like the weak point of human when you're expanding is while the expansion is going up. Because then you don't have the Arcane Tower yet, and the peasants, they're just here, they're building, they're kind of dead meat. They cannot be turned into militia, they cannot fight either, because they don't do any damage, they die very fast. So that will always be the one timing where somebody can do the most damage to a human that's expanding. I guess after that is where you can start doing better if you have already the Arcane Tower, but if you look at these numbers, like, they don't look that crazy to me. At first you see the summon damage from 20 to 25, it's like, oh my god, it's 5 more damage. But at the same time, you know, 11 shots, now it's going to be 10 shots on carrying beetles. Does that really matter that much? Like, does it change that much? Like, yes, it's a little help, but they didn't go really overboard with this. So I like the change in itself, like, but I personally would have liked to see something to help peasants, I don't know, stay alive a little bit more, like maybe a few more hit points, maybe 1 armor, like something like that. But I guess that's something, and then we'll see. It's hard to tell exactly how good this is going to be without having played. It could end up being very good as well. So we'll have to wait and try that if it goes through. Blade Master Mirror Image mana cost decreased from 100 to 80. Developers notes, we're starting to see emerging gameplay from more players using Mirror Image with Lightning Shield, which is exciting, entertaining, and fits their faction theme. However, we noticed the main deterrent of this strategy is Mirror Image's high mana cost. In addition to our Wisp Detonate change, we believe this should further promote the use of this skill. So I think this is mainly to cater towards Orc versus Night Elf. We don't really see Mirror Image in any other matchup, as far as I know, with my limited knowledge of Orc. I know I've never seen it against Human. And I don't think we're gonna start seeing it because of that, so... I like that. I feel like Orc definitely needed some help against Elf, and that might be a little bit of it. It's gonna help them better select that to at least get out of one single entangle better. Even outside of using Lightning Shield on the Blade Master, which is like a bit of a fancy move. Tauren Chieftain War Stomp stun duration against heroes reduced from 2.234. So level 1 it was 2 seconds, level 2 it was 3 seconds, and level 3 it was 4 seconds. Now it's 1.5, 2, and 2.5. I like that a lot. I've been vocal for a while that I think Stomp lasts way too long on heroes in particular. It does last very long on units as well, but they did add the cooldown, slight cooldown increase previously. But yeah, I think against heroes it was just... Like, that change went through a long time ago now, like the TC Stomp change, but still to this day, whenever I'm playing a Tauren Chieftain and he stomps on my heroes, I'm just like in disbelief at how long Stomp lasted, so I kind of like that they changed that. I did think it was OP. The numbers look very strong though. This is like... If I look at the numbers, it does look like a big nerf, but at the same time, in my opinion, it was one of the best spells in the game because of how long this lasted on heroes, so... Kind of the same thing. I'm probably going to say that about every change, but I feel like we're going to have to wait and see it in action to be able to tell how impactful this is. Developers notes, War Stomp is an extremely powerful skill that performs quite well against enemy forces. However, its zero stun lock potential needs to be reined in slightly. Yeah. Rein in slightly. Is the current reduction just slightly? When it's like... They removed the third here on level 2. And now it went from 4 seconds to 2.5. Who knows? I guess we'll have to wait and see. Undead Spirit Tower / Nerubian Tower. Repair rate increased from 35 to 60. Okay, so I don't really understand this one. Can somebody explain me? Like... Because it sounds like it's a nerf. But this makes it look like it's a buff. So I don't really understand this one. Developers notes, recent changes have allowed Undead to expand more easily, so we feel that the repair rate of their tower should be brought in line with the other races. Oh, it takes longer? Wait. Wait, so what do the numbers mean then? Will take almost twice as long to repair. What does the 35 mean exactly? I think it means that one acolyte needs now 60 what? Seconds? I mean, to be honest, I think this is... It's only on the Spirit Tower and Nerubian Tower, right? The Ziggurats before were too weak. So instead of giving them a slight buff, they were given 5 armor. And now they feel unkillable, and it feels unpushable to go for an Undead Expo. So I like this change in that now it finally feels like maybe you can, like, if you compare an Undead Expo to a Human Expo, Human feels like open season. You just run in there and you just kill all the peasants that you want. Undead got everything around their Expo buffed, like the time that it took to make the Expo, the Acolytes, whether it's the regen or the movement speeds, and then they got the 5 armor Ziggurats. Like, compare Ziggurats with Guard Towers or Arcane Towers. Like, they melt like butter, like any piercing will take them out instantly. Now, when there was a Crypt Lord Expo and you wanted to push it, you just went there and like they would literally have 1 Spirit Tower, that's it. And you would just not be able to break it, even with 50 and sometimes 60 supply. You would have to go Mortars, which shock against every single Undead unit. So I like that. 35 to 60 does seem a little extreme, but so was the 5 armor. So another one of those changes where I'm going to say we're going to have to see how it is. But I like that it was changed, and it's just on towers. It's not every building. It's only Spirit Tower and Arabian Tower. I've said it before many times, but I think either dynamic patching or just some more active patching would be nice. I mean, obviously it might not be achievable with Warcraft 3, seeing how big the game is currently and how many people they have working on it, but... So this is like a PTR, right? We don't know which one of these changes we'll go through. Maybe most of them, maybe all of them, maybe none of them. I mean, probably most of them, right? I would really like it if Blizzard, after 1 month of using this patch or whatever goes through, they talked to the community, and in particular, again, to the top pros, and asked them, what do they think about these changes? Do they think they need to scale back some of them? They need to increase some of the other ones, and then adjusted those numbers? Because imagine, for example, the Spirit Tower and Arabian Tower. I mean, it's probably not the best example because this seems minimal compared to some of the other changes. Imagine this one ends up being quite bad. I would really like it if we're not stuck with it for like, I don't know, 6 months, 9 months, a year, and instead got it fixed quicker to make the game more fair. Like, Warcraft 3 is never going to be perfectly balanced, but we should strive to achieve something pretty close to having a good balance that a lot of people are happier with than now, for sure. Which might be impossible as well. Destroyer cast points time to reduce from 8.83 to 0.5. Developers notes at 0.83 cast point, the Destroyer has a noticeable delay between casting its spells and when they go off. So we are reducing its cast point in time to the same value as other spellcasters. I think against Human it doesn't really come in play personally, because even when I try to move my Water Elementals out of the way, usually they still got caught in the Dispel because they're so fat anyway. So it's probably about other matchups. I like that. I think like Destroyer, if you play Undead, right now I think Undead's doing pretty well. They have a lot of strengths, but how late you reach your Dispel is one of the biggest problems. And when I see like that mass air style with Keeper and stuff against Undead, it does feel like sometimes the Dispel is like very, very hard to be able to use well. I don't really know much about Orc compared to that either, but it's also very tricky, I think, for Undead, so I kind of like that. They're getting a little help with that, and it's a change that will affect also different levels differently, and I do think that it's going to help the medium. It's going to help obviously at top level, but if you think about like, medium level players or like lower level, it's going to help them also a lot, I believe, to be able to dispel a bit more. So I like it. Crypt Lord's Burrow ability for current Beetle levels 2 and 3 require the Burrow upgrade. Developers note we believe that the Burrow ability for level 2 current Beetles provides too much flexibility early in the game. So we are going to require Burrow to be researched before current Beetles can use the ability. However, we will continue to closely monitor the Crypt Lord usage and evaluate if further changes are needed. I like that a lot. I said it for a long time. I thought that should be the case. I thought either that or make the movement speed of Beetles way lower, like Happy suggested himself many times. So I think this is a good change, and now if somebody Crypt Lord expands, at least after they get level 3, they're not inside of your expansion, just killing peasants left and right and just burrowing and replenishing hit points. So I like this change. Even the fact that you can't burrow them around the map to have a lot of vision like pretty early as well for like perfect map control. Death Knight, Unholy Aura level 2 movement speeds reduced from 20% movement to 15%. Developers notes the Death Knight has been the staple premier hero for Undead for a very long time after numerous buffs to other parts of the Undead arsenal. The Death Knight remains supreme. We've noticed that once the Death Knight reaches only level 2, they are able to take fights they wouldn't normally be able to due to their increased mobility and kiting potential. So level 1 and level 3 doesn't change at all? Interesting. It's only on level 2. I mean, I do think the speed auras are a little bit stupid and overpowered, but this is another one of those where you have to be like really careful with this. I do like that there is a reduction. It does feel like sometimes Undead, they're just like speed racers and you can never keep up with them. So I like that this is lowered, but again, 20 to 15%, a quarter of its previous number was cut out of this. So you need to be very careful when you cut a quarter of something, a third, or even in the case of the Wisp that we're going to see later, it's half. Yeah, let's get to it. Night Elf Wisps. Mana drain on Detonate reduced from 50 to 25. Developers notes Detonate has become too powerful, especially against Orc, due to the lack of mana regeneration option for the casters. So right now, the meta in Night Elf against Orc is that you go for Mass Tier 1 and Keeper. And it's very hard for Orc to deal with Mass Tier 1 in terms of units. They have to go, because they have to deal with the Mass Tier 1 of the opponent, and they have, grunts that are not that great against Hunts. Or even necessarily against Archer, if you have the right amount of them in the right composition. Then Night Elf expands. It's like just really tricky. And you have to go for Shamans to counter a Keeper. But the thing is, Wisps draining 50 mana can be sent in, drain a lot of the mana away from the Shamans, the Shadowhunter, and the Blade Master usually are the heroes used against that. And then Orc struggles, like obviously without mana, the Keeper will dominate. So I do agree that this should have been lowered, but personally, I don't know if I would have done 50 to 25. It does feel like very extreme. And I think you could do a different number on units and heroes. Like for example, imagine if they reduced it to, let's say, I don't even know. Like, should it be more on heroes or on units? Let's say it reduced it to 30 on units. And then, well, like the mana drain should be 30 on units instead of 25. And then on heroes, maybe 35? 30 on unit, 35 on heroes. It sounds more right? Like now it feels like it's too extreme. You got 50 to 25, the Night Elves are going to be like, why should I even send any Wisps now? It's draining 25, you need like 10 Wisps. Actually, you need like 8 Wisps to remove, like, we can do some math quickly, right? If you take 8 Wisps and you now detonate, you remove 200 mana. Before it took half that. Actually, it's not even math, it's just half. So it's crazy, the fact that you need double the amount of Wisps to do what you did before. I mean, obviously, it was too good, I think, the drain. But yeah, this is one of those that makes me a little bit worried. It's like too extreme, so we'll have to see as well. Druid of the Claw Bear form, base damage increase from 24 to 25. Developers notes Night Elf has recently been heavily reliant on tier 1 units, so we are hoping the Wisp Detonate change along with slightly buffing the damage of Druid of the Claw. Bear form should promote more strategic variety. I mean, bears are fucking garbage. Whenever I see bears as human, unless I've fallen behind early on, I'm fucking happy. I don't think they're very good. When I cast Night Elf against Undead, and I see bears, and statues shoot bears, I'm like, what the fuck? They're just like dying like 1 second, so I think it's a nice buff. I mean, obviously it's only 1 damage, 24 to 25, doesn't seem massive, but we'll have to see exactly how it changes. It's very hard to figure out what to do to bears, to be honest, other than changing their damage. Like, what do you do? What would you do to bears? I'd give them hit points? Change their attack speeds? Change their price? Like, if you think about all of the options, it seems like one of the simpler, safest one was taken now, which was buffing their damage. But it's very, very hard, I think, to balance bears. Like, in terms of unit design, like, what do you do? Chimera, friendly fire removed. Developers notes between the Frostworm, Griffin Rider, and the Chimera, only the Chimera does friendly fire. We feel this is an unnecessary component of the unit. Yeah, it's always been weird how that does friendly fire. I don't know what this means for top level. I don't feel like we see necessarily a ton of chimps nowadays. I guess it might affect like the big team games, I guess in FFA we see a lot of chimps, like Hippo Chim is like almost like the meta. In 4v4 as well, but in solo, I guess We did see them sometimes. Like nowadays humans go for a lot of knights, so sometimes you would see chimps coming out. I guess it's better for the Night Elf now that they don't do that. In other matchups, like I never see chimps against orc. Not really against undeads, and not in mirror, so yeah, not sure what to think. I think it might be fine, but I can see how some people might think this wasn't necessarily super necessary. I guess the Night Elves will be happy, right? Easier to manage now. Items. Helm of Valor, Medallion of Courage, Hood of Cunning, stat increase change from +4 to +5 for each stat provided. Developers notes these items were underpowered compared to the other items available in the same tier, so we're increasing the stats they provide. Well, I got a newsflash for you, they're still underpowered even with +5. The problem is that it's too random, right? If let's say you play human and you have an Archmage and a Mountain King, and then you find agility plus intelligence. Who do you give it to? If you have an Archmage, getting pure damage is fine. You don't really need additional mana because you already have Brilliance and he's like already pretty intelligent. Like sometimes you'll even find some tomes for it. So you don't really need much intelligence. So usually you won't even put this kind of item on the Archmage. He's not here to like do a lot of the damage unless we're talking like pure claws and stuff like that. So you put it on your Mountain King, but then agility, what does agility give to the little guy down there? Like, you don't really care about his attack damage. But intelligence is interesting for a Mountain King, so depending on the race you play, like sometimes it's really hit or miss, right? Like, I really wish they would have gotten rid of all these items and instead done the Crown of Kings, which I think +5 to everything is too much, but they could have done +4 to everything. And then it would mean that this item would be really good. When you find it, you're pretty happy. And then when you find the other auras, you're also pretty happy because they're useful. Unless you find an aura that you already have. Which is why I still think it's necessary to increase the price of this tier of item. Because when you find one of the big auras and it's just, you already have it, it's so bad that you can't sell it for a lot of gold. And like the opponent finds the best one, then you have like a huge deficit. So I still would like that change, maybe going through down the line. Claws of Attack +6. Replaced with Claws of Attack +5. Often seen as the best item in its tier among the community, we're replacing this item to reduce issues with obtaining the item early. I mean, I think it's helpful to do something like that, but then still nothing's being done about finding rings. Like, finding rings in comparison is still very bad. It's not as bad as before, because now the opponent, instead of having +6, if you find a ring and he has a claw, he's gonna have +5, but it's still... You have a freaking ring on a hero that it's not useful on, perhaps. I mean, in the case of human, we have to open Archmage all the time, so it's just like the worst. So I still would like to change some... I still would like to see some more item changes, I think. That would be useful. As always, these updates are subject to change, but we believe this provides a good starting point for testing data gathering and feedback from the community. As a date for this patch, we're currently targeting the week of October 19, after DreamHack Fall and WCG have concluded. This is really sick, actually, because in the past, it was just random patches in the middle of tournaments at like the worst timing, whereas like now they're straight up saying, we're gonna wait until these tournaments have concluded and then we'll release the patch. So honestly, like, thumbs up to Blizzards. I think they did a very good job gathering feedback this time. I know I've been a big critic and I criticized them a lot in the past, but they gathered a good amount of feedback and there's a lot of interesting changes. Like, obviously, you know, not everybody's gonna be happy. I can already hear a bunch of people saying like, oh, human's gonna be too strong. I can't believe the Arcane Tower got buffed. Well, it's the Arcane Tower got buffed, like, big deal. But I think we would have to see a bunch of games on it first to see exactly what it's like. And the important thing to remember is that nothing's definitive. Not necessarily all of these changes will go through, and even if they do, they can be tweaked later on. And I think patching the game is pretty important. You don't want the meta to get like too stale, unless like the meta is great and it's like super balanced, then of course I wouldn't mind as much, but even then, it adds a fun factor to change a bunch of stuff like this. So I'm fairly happy. I do feel like there could have been more, but it's already a lot, to be honest, and it's a lot of good changes. Some of them seem extreme. I think in particular the Wisp one, it does feel like 50 to 25 is just crazy. So yeah, we'll see.